What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Lexi J Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lexi Johnson, and this is my husband and co-host, Brett Johnson. This week, we have some Q&A. So we had some really good questions submitted to the email. I'm actually going to read a couple directly just because I really like the wording of it. But we're going to talk about the sustainability of macro tracking, whether or not we have hobbies, and if we do, what those are. And then someone had asked, they actually introduced us to a new phrase or a new term. It's a TikTok term. If you guys know what DINKWADS are, apparently we are DINKWADS, so we'll learn more about that later. But first things first, let's talk about the sustainability of macro tracking. So in the question she had mentioned, she's like, I don't know that I see myself tracking and still doing this when I'm 50 years old, but maybe I need to change my approach to that. And I think I'm going to take the reins on this and I'll let you input, just because macro tracking isn't intended to be a long form thing. And when you think about long form, it's not meant to be doing for decades. So I guess that you may get varying opinions on this from different advisors or coaches, but this is my approach and the approach that my team uses. I think that macro tracking is an excellent tool to give you an awareness of what you're taking in and an understanding of where you're getting nutrients and how to make yourself feel and look as best as possible. And without tracking your food and understanding or even like gauging those nutrients or those values, you have no idea on what to fix, what to adjust. You don't know where your gaps or your surpluses are. So it's really just a gauge in which you can use to manage and basically manipulate the outcomes that you want. So I would say absolutely not. You don't need to worry about tracking. And I know that this individual is in her 20s, so I don't think they're going to be tracking when you're 50. But if I like to say, if you do it right now, then you don't need to be doing it long term.
Right.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I think that it's meant to teach you, more or less what you're putting in your body, because whenever you do like a keto diet or whatever fad diet you choose to do, people don't really understand, other than, okay, well, in theory, this is what the diet's supposed to do. If I'm taking in like all these fats, no carbs, then my body's going to go into ketosis and, it's going to start rapidly burning fat. And they get that in theory, and then they don't really understand anything beyond that. What you learn in macro tracking is truly, what comprises your calories, because you learn, how many calories there are in a gram of protein, carbs, and fats, respectively. And I think that just begins to teach you, excuse me, the basic tools and the basic fundamentals of basic, nutrition. And you start to intuitively understand what you're taking in and how it affects your body.
It also is it's such a great tool to develop food freedom. So if you're someone that is nervous about that, or you've had a history of an unhealthy disorder or an unhealthy relationship with food, that's often because you were overly restrictive. And my approach to macro tracking is I'm not restrictive at all. Typically, my girls and my clients in general, they eat more when tracking with us than they did prior. And it's an awareness of where those nutrients are coming from and making sure that they're coming from things that keep you satiated and, make you feel the best. But to the point of food freedom, a lot of people that are constantly on yo-yo diets, or they want a meal plan, that is like one of my top requested things. I constantly get questions about, will you just tell me exactly what to eat? Will you give me a meal plan? And I hate meal plans. I don't think that they're sustainable long-term, because that makes you reliant on whatever I tell you to eat.
Right. You're relying on somebody else telling you exactly what to do versus understanding what you're putting in.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to be dependent on another individual to tell them what to eat, because things come up and life happens. And then, like, what happens if you're going to your kid's birthday party? What happens if you guys are out to eat, or if it's a holiday and God forbid there's something on the menu that's not in your plan? Then you panic and you have no idea what to do. But if you've macro tracked for a long enough period of time, then have a pretty good understanding of, okay, we can kind of portion this out. We can eyeball, our options on the table and make a good decision. Just make the best decision available without feeling like you've messed up or you've derailed anything that you've got going on. I just think the peace of mind that macro tracking has brought me, and just the sense of control that, I can navigate any situation, whether that be we're out to eat or we're on the go, we're grabbing stuff at a gas station, we're enjoying holiday meals, and I can get a pretty good idea of what I'm taking in and how that's going to make me feel.
Right. Yeah. Life isn't cookie cutter. So whenever you rely on cookie cutter meal plans and somebody else telling you exactly what to do, then whenever a non-cookie cutter situation arises, then you don't know what to do unless, you understand what you're putting in your body.
Right. So with macro tracking, there's certainly a learning curve. You have to be willing to make it a learning process in order to get the fruits of it out, of the experience. Because when you first get started, if you're anything like me, I was completely ignorant to it all. I did not know what a macro was. And if you're listening to this and you're saying, I don't know what a macro is, macros, it's short for macronutrients. So the foods that you eat are comprised of macronutrients. You have 3 of them. They're protein, carbs, and fats. And adding those all up together equal your overall calories. So they are all essential to your body. You need your body needs protein, it needs carbs, it needs fats. It just needs it in different ratios depending on your needs, and what your goals are. Which is another really cool thing about macro tracking, is that it's specific to you. It's not like Brett said, a cookie cutter plan, meal plan that someone just copied and pasted and emailed to you. It is specified with you in mind, which is really unique, because that's exactly what it should be when it comes to fueling your body. Macro tracking genuinely changed my life. Not only like my appearance, it made me look a lot different, but just energetically complete change. But the sense of control and the understanding that I am fueling my body really well. You guys know, if you've listened to me for any amount of time, that just putting myself in the best position possible to be as healthy as possible is really, really important to me. And that starts with an awareness of what I'm taking in. And I think that there's so much emotion tied to food that can give that a bad reputation, that if you look at it in black and white terms and you're just thinking strictly analytical, I'm just going to gauge what I'm putting in my body. And then you can kind of self-assess, like, all right, I feel so much better when I'm eating this way. I feel a lot worse when I eat this way, just gauging those things. And if you can detach emotion and take it from that, like, observational scientific standpoint, whatever lights up in my brain when it comes to that, it's very satisfying to look at it like an experiment and just understand that you're doing what's best for your body. But I think that just detaching emotion from it is the best. It's easier said than done, but I do think that that's been very helpful for me in just taking an analytical standpoint and viewing it as a way to feel better, a way to look the way that I want.
Yep. 100%. Question number 2.
Oh, wait, I do want to say one thing. We mentioned that it's not meant for long-term use. So I don't want that to be something where you're like counting down the clock, because if done correctly, it gets really easy. So Brett and I are doing this challenge just because we made a commitment to each other, to ourselves, to the Lexi Wellness crew. We're going to complete this challenge with the rest of them. So we're going to track our food with everyone else. We have a really good idea of what's in our food because we tracked long enough. But it is a really nice way to kind of recalibrate. So we had taken a few months off, and we could go at this point. We have a good enough awareness of where our nutrients are coming from and portion sizing, because we've weighed and tracked our food long enough. But it is just a really nice way to recalibrate, because even if you have tracked long enough and you have a really good awareness, the portion sizing and weighing things out, it's always going to be skewed if you start eyeballing. So I think it's a nice exercise to kind of jump back into every now and then. Like I said, we're doing it for 8 weeks to complete this challenge, to do it alongside the Lexi Wellness crew. And it's a really good exercise just to kind of fine tune some skills.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Just fine-tuning every now and then. It's a good idea to go back and make sure that, if you need to calibrate.
Yeah. Okay, our second question is asking about hobbies. So they want to know if we have any hobbies, if we do, what they are.
You go first. I'm curious to hear this because I don't think you have any.
I don't think. Okay, well, it's very ironic that this question, well, we did choose it out of several, but because I talked about this, I was on a different podcast earlier today, and the person asked me about this, and it's a common question that I get because I know people are just curious.
Wait, actually, I think I do know your answer.
Okay, I bet you do because I think we've had this discussion. For a long time, I felt kind of guilty when I asked this question because I really don't have hobbies outside of exercising, which is kind of encompassed in my work. I enjoy reading, but I kind of tie that into the podcast and then back into my work because of the material I read. So when someone would ask if I had hobbies, I felt a little like...
Targeted.
Yeah, I felt a little targeted because I didn't have a good answer because I didn't. But kind of taking a wider lens view of it, I feel like a lot of times hobbies, or maybe that question itself, that question comes from an expectation of someone else where they have a wide array of hobbies that bring them interest. But this is really what I like to do. I don't know that I can't think of anything else I would rather spend my time doing other than doing what I do. I enjoy working. Work fulfills me. I really like exercising. It makes me feel good physically, mentally. I like reading. It kind of calms me down and it, again, fuels me mentally. But I think that when someone suggests that I get a hobby, or maybe that's more of the targeting thing, it kind of annoys me. If someone suggests that I take up a new hobby and they give a specific, I don't know, crochet or whatever. Is crochet the knitting one, or is that the uppity?
Knitting is like with the two, like, pointy ones. And then crochet is the one with like the little hook on the end. Oh,
what's the kind of sport that sounds like crochet?
Oh.
Cricket?
Croquet?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Anyway,
That's
that
right,
tells you how well versed I am. Regardless, I'm not going to knit and I'm not going to cricket or croquet. Regardless, when someone like suggests a hobby to me, I get a little annoyed because I think that that's an expectation that I should enjoy the things that they enjoy, but that's not true because they likely don't enjoy the things I do. But also, why would I reallocate time from things that I do enjoy and that I do find fulfillment from into things that I have less interest in or likely wouldn't find fulfillment from? I think that it's just an expectation that they don't want to work all the time, so they don't want me to work all the time either.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of one of those insecurity things. It's projection, really.
Not to say, like, the person that asked this, I don't think that that's at all the question. It just, like...
Right. I think it's mere curiosity, but...
For sure.
But I think that there are a lot of people that like asking that question because they want to hear you say that you do have a hobby, or if the response is, well, I don't really have any hobbies, that I get all my fulfillment out of my work, then, they're kind of ready to jump at you and say, well, what about balance? What about your work-life balance?
Yeah, which we could go into in another time. It's, like I said, I don't know that there's anything that I would ever, or I can't think of anything I would rather spend that time doing.
Yeah, I think it comes down to fulfillment, really. Like, are you genuinely fulfilled?
Yeah, I am. And I think that I know for sure that there's more of that fulfillment, like what I feel, and the more people that I'm able to impact and reach and help influence their lives and the lives of their families, then I crave more and more and more of it. So I can't think of another or better use of my time than reaching for that.
Yeah. And you do enjoy things outside of work, but yeah, you don't spend a lot of time at them. I mean, we like hiking, but we only go hiking. Granted, that's exercise, but we go hiking anytime we go on vacation. That's kind of our optimal vacation setting, is to go somewhere with some mountains and where we can just go out and enjoy ourselves out in nature.
You have some hobbies, though.
Yeah, I do.
Care to share with the class?
Well, I like sports memorabilia. as you know, as you can probably see in the YouTube version of this. You can see at least a glimpse of a couple of things that I have just kind of stuck on the walls here. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoy collecting sports memorabilia. I'm trying to think of like.
You've recently become big into cars.
Yeah, I that's certainly something that whenever I have the funds to do it, that I'll probably really get into. At this point, like I just have like a dream car barn, and I have like a list of cars that I want to fill it with.
Yeah.
And I have, that's part of my visualization that I do often, is visualizing the cars that I'll have in my car barn in the future. So yeah, I mean, there's stuff that I'm painting the picture for in my mind that I'll have a hobby in later down the road, but I could say that for a couple different things. But yeah, there's a couple specific topics that that I have genuine interest in.
Yeah. You also, you haven't been at it or you've taken a little break here, just because some other things have taken priority, but you also are taking helicopter lessons.
Yeah.
And that's a hobby that I think a lot of people are interested in.
Yeah. I intend to have my own helicopter in the future. And yeah, right now, to be quite frank, I just haven't made it a priority to do the ground school because it's bookwork, and like anyone else, I'm really not a whole lot different from the average person. I hate like the idea of me having to go back to, school. And so I just got to bite the bullet and do that. I'm not really a procrastinator. Like if there's something I want to do, and I genuinely want to do that, I just do it. I bite the bullet and do it. But I've just prioritized other stuff for the time being, at least. I've got quite a bit of flight hours, but yeah, I look forward to that.
All right, our final question, and I want to read this because she put a lot of detail into this. Okay, so in the last few episodes, I've gathered that you guys are what TikTok calls DINKWADs, dual income, no kids with a dog, which I love that term. I'm a fan. We're DINKWADs.
Leave it to TikTok.
How do you feel about DINKWAD? I think it's kind of cute.
I think that was that like a name that people called each other, like?
I think you're thinking of Nimrod.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
Which is oddly not at all similar to that, but I knew exactly what you're talking about.
I was thinking like it resembled like a derogatory term, but obviously this doesn't. DINKWAD. It's just an acronym.
Okay. As someone entering into her DINKWAD era, I'd like to learn more about how you all have grown and developed the short-term future you. I'm wondering how short-term future me, 5-ish years, and long-term future me, 10 to 20-ish years, are similar and different in their habits, priorities, identities. For example, one day I want to be a mom, a wife, a home builder. However, I'm confused. Should I start working on those now when I don't even have a kid, husband, or house? What can I do in the meantime to find identity, build habits, and keep the right things prioritized? Can I set short-term goals that give me something to work toward in the meantime?
Very insightful question.
It is a really insightful question. And I think that it's really cool that you have the foresight and the aspiration that, like, you want to be a home builder, you want to be a wife, you want to be a mom, even if the things aren't in place. Because I think that putting yourself in a position and like kind of visualizing that future for you, I think that's the first step. Visualization is really powerful. And I used to think it was really hokey pokey, but I do think that it holds a lot of power of just like putting that mental image and that belief in your mind that you're going to get to the point where you want to. But also I like that you kind of have the goals broken down into shorter term goals and then, thinking long term, because I think that short term goals keep you more energized, and they're definitely, they keep you more engaged because they're easier to hit or more,
regularly.
I mean, you can hit milestones much quicker, obviously. But that's what's going to lead to your long-term goals, because if you throw out short-term goals, then the long-term is already set up for failure. Yeah. So she talks about building identity, and you and I, we've kind of gone through an evolution of identity since we've been married. We'll be celebrating 5 years of marriage in a month and a half.
It's kind of crazy.
It is wild. We've been DINKWADs for 5 years almost.
Yeah, we entered with a dog, so we've never not been DINKWADs.
I know. So, identity-wise, I have definitely evolved much more in the past 5 years, because you entered this marriage. You were very much. When I met Brett, he was 20 years old, and I said at the time, like, he is the oldest 20-year-old I've ever met. And he's slowly aging into his into his wisdom, because he's always just been wise beyond his years. And I'm slowly but surely catching up a little bit, at least, gaining some ground. So I say that I've evolved more. That's not a testament to me. That's more so saying, like, I was more immature and less, I don't know, evolved going into it all. But now, like, the things we talk about, I think, are more vision driven. Like you had mentioned, the things on your vision board. You want a car barn and you want a helicopter. I have really big aspirations for my business, and much of what we talk about, kind of going back into the hobbies or lack thereof, like, is what it's going to take and what we can do in the short term in order to get and make these goals and visions a reality. So I think that just having the foresight, first off, to even ask the question, that's really cool.
Yeah. The fact that you're thinking about it, the short term and the long term goals, that goes a long way, because that's the first step.
Well, you can dive in first. I want to think about this.
Okay. So can I see that again? That was a very insightful question, but it was also pretty in-depth.
She says, I'd like to learn more about how you've grown and developed. And I think that a big part of that is, one, who you surround yourself with, and two, who you surround yourself with content-wise. So what you consume, whether that's books or podcasts.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that, since you had mentioned that you've listened to several episodes of ours, that we're at least being a slightly good influence
yeah. So
on that.
I think, just off the cuff here, how I've grown and developed into, how I envisioned future me, is what I've surrounded myself with, because, the common phrase is, you're the common denominator of the 3 people that you spend the most time with or whatever. And we are very selective about the people that we either listen to, take advice from, or, hang around. So I think there's a lot to be said with that, because if you're hanging around people that don't have, big aspirations, big goals to go far in life, and, and that can be professionally, that can be whatever, if you don't have to be professionally driven, you can be family driven, spiritually driven, whatever. But if you're not surrounding yourself with people that are looking to make progress, then I think that that's going to deter you from progressing. So I think that that's an element. And, like, we read every day, so it becomes like this thing that's just ingrained in you, like, progress is the key. And there's really not a day that goes by where we miss a day of reading, like, once in a blue moon, if we're out of our routine. But, we consume so much material, so we're constantly evolving and learning, and there's never, there's never a phase of our life where we're not looking to just evolve in some way, shape, or form, because there's always a way to get better. So I think that that's how I've kind of shaped who I am now. And I still have a long ass ways to go, but I have these goals, I have these visions, these things that I visualize. And in order to get there, then you have to have action. You read the content, you listen to the people, and you have to put forth action. And I think that that's, something that you can't forget, because that's where evolution truly starts to take place, where the action takes, where the action actually happens.
And Brett had referenced just who you surround yourself with, and we are pretty selective about that. We have a tight circle, and yeah, that's kind of, I mean, that's what we prefer, really. It's a really hard transition, especially if you're in your young 20s and coming out of college. That was a really big thing for us, just because we were used to being surrounded by a bunch of friends, that our common goal at that time was just to have a really good time. Like, and that's completely normal if that's what season of life you're in. But then we transitioned into, we got married 2 weeks after I graduated. So Brett had already been graduated. He had been out of school for a while, and then I was fresh out of college. So it was a stark contrast of going from living with all my best friends into now I'm a wife, and now I live hours from all of my friends and my family. And then I just kind of, I had to be selective of who I hung out with, quote unquote, by whose content I was consuming. That was on social media, on podcasts, what books you're reading. And if you don't have the luxury of being in person around or in an environment where you're surrounded by people that are more creative than you, that are more experienced than you, that are more successful, that are smarter, fill in the blank, whatever superlative, that are further down the road than you are, then a way that you can fill in those gaps, like I work from home. I don't have the luxury of being surrounded by people that I can kind of feed off their energy and learn from in person. So fill in those gaps by consuming all the content that you can, reading, listening to their podcasts, following people that are going to better your life and not just entertain you in the short term, to keep that discomfort or fear of being bored out of your head. Like, be selective of who you consume, and it's gonna do wonders for you. I haven't worked in an environment where I was around anyone in years now, and I continue to learn more, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and much of what's going to make you successful in any of your goals has already been founded. Like, take advantage of the people that have already been down the road from you, and what lessons they've learned, what mistakes they've made. Dodge those. You're going to make your fair share of your own. But I think that utilizing the resources you have at hand, I mean, so many people have written incredible books. They have started podcasts. They have created YouTube videos and put content up constantly on Instagram, giving out their quote unquote secrets to success. And it comes down to the little things. So I think that just being selective about who you surround yourself with, and that definitely includes who you surround yourself with virtually or digitally.
Right. And part of the question was, how is short-term future me and long-term future me, how are they going to be similar? How are they going to be different? And there's really no perfect answer to that, because you don't know what you're going to be in the future. All you can do is focus on the next step, the next progression to become who you want to be in the short term. And then long term you is just going to be this accumulation. It's going to be the compound effect of all these short term goals just stacking up on top of one another.
Little pivots along the way. We had mentioned this earlier over the weekend, because Brett and I we had a long drive and we were talking about business, and he said that it was kind of funny because when we first got together, I could not care less about any sort of business. I did want to talk about that, and now that's a lot of what we talk about. That is so much of the content I consume is entrepreneurs and things like that. So if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would never have said that I was going to be a business owner. But now, I mean, like you said, just accumulation of the little pivots along the way and the constant course corrections. That's where I'm at. And now I can't imagine doing anything else. So I had mentioned in a previous podcast, thinking about it like you're driving down the road in complete darkness, but you've got your headlights on and you can only see 200 feet in front of you. Just focus on what's in front of you right now and what you can control right now. And if you focus on winning the days, the weeks and the years will take care of themselves.
Yeah. Just make sure that whenever you do get to that destination, that you don't stop there, because the idea is that the goalpost keeps moving mm-hmm. and keeps moving and keeps moving. And that's how you really make, huge strides.
I think a good way to gauge it, if you're on the right path to where you want to be, or anything, is at the end of the day, say if every single day I lived was just like this, would I be happy about where I ended up? Or if I had no choice in making any other decisions that you had control over, if it was like today, how would it work? How would it work out in a year, in 5 years? And if you would make changes, then the good thing is you get to wake up tomorrow and you can make those adjustments. And there's always going to be some things out of your control, but thinking strictly of the things that you have in your control, if you can finish the day and say, man, I was really happy with my effort, I was really happy with the decisions I made, with my performance, then I think you're on the right track. She had mentioned she doesn't have a husband or a boyfriend, I think, but she wants to be a DINKWAD. Should we talk about selecting a partner?
Whew.
What?
It's a big topic.
Yeah. I hope everyone finds their own Brett Johnson, but you can't have mine. I've said that for years.
You have.
What's
that's a tough one.
What's your number one characteristic?
I don't want to try to pretend like I'm the relationship guru. What was your question?
What's your number one characteristic in a partner?
Juicy booty. No, let me think here. I feel like I would have to have somebody like assess me to truly get the right answer there, because I'm struggling to pick one, definable trait that would essentially, either sway me of saying, okay, well, I'm attracted to that person, or I'm not attracted to that person.
It's like that game, she's a 10 but, or she's a 1 but.
Yeah, I like you have edge, and I think that that's something that I'm attracted to.
What do you mean by edge?
Like, you're kind of, I'm trying to think of a way to define it. So I don't want it to come across as negative, but like you have edge. Like,
I'm kind of an asshole. Is that what you're trying to say?
I don't know. You just have a strong presence, a strong personality.
Thank you. I'll take it as a compliment. Appreciate it.
You're witty. I don't know. I'm turned off by somebody who's like super soft, and somebody that just isn't goal oriented. I think that personality type, or the opposite of, is just something that totally deters me.
Like apathy.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Apathetic personalities they couldn't be less attractive to me.
Yeah, I agree. And like I think that about like friendships also. Like I don't want to hang around anyone that just doesn't care about anything.
Yeah.
Like I would have more in common with someone that is strongly passionate about a completely opposite viewpoint of mine than someone that just doesn't care at all, I think.
Yeah.
At least they have some conviction into what they believe.
That's what I was getting ready to say is, just somebody that's convicted in something, whether or not it's something that aligns with what, I'm interested in. Like I respect people that have deep convictions, and, you can point to a lot of people that have deep convictions about kind of, ludicrous things, but like, I think there's something to be said about that.
Yeah. Passion is attractive in any realm, even if you're passionate about crazy shit. Like I can get on board if someone is enthusiastic about any topic.
Right. Yeah, you can make anybody believe anything if they believe that you believe it.
Yeah.
It's like Stephen A. Smith, like what he said in my last podcast. He was discussing with him how Stephen A. Smith isn't trying to convince you that you should believe something. Stephen A. Smith convinces you that Stephen A. Smith believes exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
And that's how he gets an audience to listen to him and believe that what he's saying is the truth, because Stephen A. Smith believes that what he's saying is 100% the truth.
Because I think that people are just drawn to people that are sure of themselves. They don't like uncertainty. So if someone is incredibly confident in what they have to say,
confidence, not arrogance.
It gives stability. It's like, okay, that person knows what's happening. They feel safe.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I'm attracted to confidence, but not arrogance.
Yeah. I was just curious. We can talk more about partner hunting or what we look for in a partner later on. But those were really good questions. I enjoyed those.
Was good.
So if you have any other questions, if you want to submit them to
pod@lexijwellness.com.
pod@lexijwellness.com.
And that is the easiest way to field those questions. Lexi receives them in her, IG DMs, and God forbid you send them to her Facebook direct messages, and they won't be fielded. But yeah, they are most easily received through the email. So if you would submit them that way, or in the YouTube comments, then that would be great.
I really enjoyed that. I love you little dinkwad.
I love you too, you dinkwad.
All right. We will talk to you guys later. See you next week.